Hello and welcome to Restless Gecko Reviews. I'd like to start off by saying a big apologies for the people that do follow me, all 247 of you, for not putting out any content recently. I had a lot going on, some big changes happening, decided to leave the country, so there's a lot to sort out there. Obviously we had Christmas, but I've still continued my adventure into the peripheral space, taking on a few different mice, a couple new mouse pads, but I just wanted to talk today about what I'm bringing with me into 2025. So, to start off, we'll go over one I've talked about recently, the S2-DW. Really enjoyed using that since I've had it. I think I've had it about a couple of months now. Thoroughly impressed with it. Great quality, decent weight, great clicks. Like the little docking station, everything like that. It's been absolutely perfect. I tend to use it more for tracking games or more faster paced games, so for example Call of Duty, stuff like that, anything where there's like a significant amount of tracking, just because I like how pointed it is, and it's just a nice shape for tracking. Gives you a bit more flexibility and movement with your wrist and things like that. So yeah, thoroughly enjoyed the S2-DW. Moving on from there is another new addition, is the ZA13. So the ZA13 I got just because I wanted something a bit more unique, a bit different. Obviously it has the really large hump at the back. Really good quality mouse. It's got these nice little lips on the side there so that you can lift it up nice and easy if you put your finger there with very little effort. Clicks again, very similar to the S2, actually a little bit more tense than the S2. You tend to have a bit more of a pointed grip just because how your fingers sort of come to a point at the end. It just feels like your hand is sort of moved into this sort of position where you're squeezing the two muscles in your hand together just to hold it, but it gives you a nice stable experience. Really nice and mobile. I quite like the shape, not my very favourite shape, but still really enjoy it for things like CS2, Valorant, tactical shooters in general. Not so much for tracking heavy games, just because the size of the hump, it does limit your movement somewhat, a bit more flexibility. But yeah, great mouse. ZA13 is really good. I can recommend. All of the DW range seems to be really top quality. Outside of that, we have possibly my favourite ambi mouse, large ambi mouse that is the XE. So I had the XE-S. It was a great mouse, really good quality tech, really good clicks, everything about it was perfect. The QC was amazing. The only thing I didn't like was obviously the size. It becomes harder and harder to use over a longer period of time, just because you're really sort of contorting your hand into that shape just to get that solid grip with it. And now my grip's changed. I decided to move it on because it just wasn't really working for me. But I really love the XE. The XE is sort of like the ideal large medium ambi mouse for people that can't get that consistent grip on the GPX. Because of the shape at the back, the hump is more sort of more of a gradual drop off to the back. You kind of get that you can fit your whole hand on it with quite a lot of ease, and it's very consistent. You can come back to it, put your hand on the mouse, it's exactly where it was before. I know a lot of people have some issues with the GPX, and every time they hold it, they come back to it and they're putting their hand on it in a different way, and they just don't get that consistency that they like. I think that's less of an issue for people with larger hands. I think it's for people with sort of like medium to small hands that do like the GPX. They do tend to have that problem. But yeah, it's great. The only issues I have with this, and with a lot of the older Vaxee mice that I've had, starting with the MP-01, MP-01S, the MP-01, I'm trying to think what else there was. I think it's just those two. Both of them had a lot of side-to-side play, just due to how the clicks are structured on the internals. They did sort that with the XE-S when they put these little fins that just stick up and stop the switch moving. You do get a lot of side-to-side play on these, as you do with, again, a lot of the older Vaxees. Not so much of an issue in tactile shooters, but if you're tracking and you're moving your hand and it's quite intense, you can feel that sort of sway and a little bit of grind. Nothing too major, but it is noticeable. But again, tactical shooters, I don't really feel that at all. Scroll wheel's great. Don't really use the emoji button or that thing in the middle. swap core pads onto it. Really enjoy this mouse. I think it's a great shape, great mouse, great quality. A little bit on the heavy side for today's standards, but I don't have an issue with it, especially seeing as I play tactile shooters the most. Weight doesn't really matter too much to me. Not getting fatigued, especially when you're holding angles most of the time and predicting movement. It's not really an issue. Just makes you more stable, if anything else. Then moving on to a new addition, we have the Outset. The Vaxee AX, no longer the Outset, because I believe they parted ways with Outset, so they no longer have the rights to use that name, although it was previously known as the Vaxee Outset AX. I absolutely love this shape. I've been starting to get more into ergos. I think the most important part with an ergo is finding something in between stable and mobile is the biggest sort of difficulty. Deathadder V3 Pro, obviously quite a large mouse, very stable, but you don't sort of get that wrist mobility in it. Anything smaller generally is lower profile, so people with bigger hands can struggle. But this, that's the issue I had with the EC2 as well. I've got the EC1. EC1 is very stable, not very mobile. The EC2 was more mobile, but again, it was just a bit stiff for my liking in terms of what it did to my hand and my grip. But the AX is a nice in-between for me. It has the perfect amount of stability with the perfect amount of mobility. It still fills my palm, makes me feel really in control, but it just doesn't have that overbearing size to it where it feels like I'm having to do a 3-point turn to move across my mouse pad. Again, the weight's a little bit heavy for today's standards, but it doesn't really bother me that much. Built like a tank, you can click the back button by pressing the shell in the bottom. Not really an issue. If you do that, you're doing it wrong. Scroll wheel's nice and recessed, which I actually quite appreciate. It's quite low profile. Clicks are great. Again, you do get a little bit of side-to-side play, as you do with a lot of older Vaxees. But yeah, all round great quality mouse. Absolutely loving it. Started to get more into the ergo side of things just because of the level of comfort for the time I'm playing, for the time I'm working, those sorts of things. An ergo is just a little bit better for me. It does diminish my aim a little bit, but it's a sacrifice for comfort versus performance sometimes. But sometimes again, I'll switch to the XE, or I'll switch to a GPX, or I'll switch to the S2, depending on how I'm feeling at the time, depending on my sense at the time, depending on the mouse pad I'm using. I just pair things up a little bit differently. So again, good old faithful GPX Superlight 2. Not massively impressed with Logitech since the GPX 2 came out and the GPX 2 decks. Apologies. They all had the same issue, and that issue was that if you pressed on this side here, it would sink down. The base of the mouse would sink down into the shell because the little plastic bits that hooked weren't perfect, and maybe the shell had been warped or whatever. I mean, these were brand new. This is the second black one I've had because I had to send the old one back, and I got a new unit. So I RMA'd the first and got this unit, which again had the same issue to a lesser extent, but I've now fixed by putting some tape on the inside, which I shouldn't have to do for $150, £150, however much you pay. Mouse, you shouldn't have to be doing repairs on day 1, day 2, day 3, or even day 30. It should just come perfect, but not always the case, and you have to make concessions sometimes. The GPX 2 decks was exactly the same, which is why I sent it back, but the issue with that was because it's such a hollow shape and it's quite a high shape, and it feels really, the plastic felt very thin, and I could flex the shape, I could flex the top shell in on itself, which I really didn't like, and it didn't feel that good a quality. The shape itself I liked, I performed well with, but again, it was just subpar in terms of the quality. They've really fallen off, I think, since the first Superlight. I think that was absolute tank. Obviously, they had double clicking issues at times for some people. It seemed to get better as the production went along, but and I think part of it is because they've used recycled material by the looks of it on the bottom, whereas on the GPX Superlight, particularly the red one I've got over there, it's more of a glossy, newer type of material. Like by newer, I mean it's not recycled, and it just seemed way more sturdy, and that one's held up really, really well. So yeah, that's sort of what I'm bringing into 2025 with me. In terms of mouse pads, I'm currently using the Dye Orange Zero Soft, which I really like. It's a good all-rounder, good balance pad. Not too fast, not too slow, does a good job. Still does catch hairs like crazy, which really winds me up sometimes. But yeah, you can't really go wrong with a Zero. Outside of that, I'm also bringing the Kurosun Samurai. If I can get it into frame. There we go. Again, another really good balance pad. Probably, I would say, slower than the Zero, but I thoroughly enjoy it. It gives me a lot of control. Moving into the latest new addition is the GSR, well, HSR3, which is essentially a 50 by 50 GSR. They've changed the surface slightly. Doesn't really feel that much different from the GSR2, if I'm perfectly honest, but the exercise is quite nice. Although, be careful that 50 by 50 is a lot larger, even larger than the XL size of the Artisan, so it will take up a lot more real estate on your desk and can be a little bit awkward, so you might have it folded over a little bit, something like that. And then we also have the, just throw my mic around, the Massimo Pro from Superbeings Lab with the anime waifu, whose hair you can see, and then eye, and then face. There we go. Really nice control pad. Very controlled, I would say more so than the HSR or GSR, whatever you want to call it. We've got weird branding technique there from Zowie. Really nice without feeling too bogged down, too muddy. Just a really nice balance, I have to say. In terms of audio, I'm still using my iFi ZenDac V2 and probably will never move on from it because I'm not really that bothered. It's more of a fit and forget solution for me. The ZenDac V2 has just done a really good job. I don't have the budget to expand out into more exotic audio at the moment, but I'm quite happy with what I have. I can massively recommend the iFi ZenDac V2. It's very plug and play. I believe there is a V3 now. It's quite a neutral source, especially if you've got like a bad motherboard and the onboard sound is just awful. I can recommend just getting something like a Sound Blaster or whatever. Really good. This is a bit of an upgrade. And it's also nice because you can just adjust it on the fly instead of having to muck about on your desktop. In terms of IEMs, I have the Aoshida E20, which are semi-open back, dual dynamic driver. Really clear, nice soundstage, really good presentation. I can accurately pinpoint where things are coming from without it getting too muddy and too overwhelming. It's very good for music as well. The enough bass to give you that emphasis from gunshots, so it makes you feel like you're involved. So it is very good for single player games, story games, narrative games, but it's also good for competitive as well. Like I said, it's the imaging is pretty decent on them for the money. I think they're like $35, $40, something like that. Readily available on Amazon. I believe you can get them on AliExpress and all that sort of stuff as well. So yeah, they're just a nice all rounder. The mid range is quite pronounced. Without being too overwhelming. The highs aren't too shrill. You get a really good sense of footsteps. They really cut through. So yeah, I can massively recommend them as sort of like a budget gaming IEM. In terms of headphones, I've got a fair few, but at the moment, just based on comfort and sound quality, I've got the Beyerdynamic DT900 Pro X's. Again, they're very comfortable. I also have the Harmonic Dyne Zeus Pro Elite. Harmonic Dyne Zeus Elite, sorry. They're very good, again, just as comfortable, but at the moment I'm just wearing the 900 Pro X. I've also got the HD560S from Sennheiser. Again, another really good pick. Yeah. I've also got, the other one that I've been using as well is the Kiwi Ears Quartet. A bit too bassy at times, better for music than it is for gaming as far as I'm concerned. I put both of the dip switches down just so it gives me a bit more clarity, but yeah, I prefer the Aoshida, even though they are like a cheaper alternative. But yeah, thoroughly enjoyed them. In terms of my monitor, I'm still using a 360Hz Alienware and won't be changing anytime soon. But yeah, that's pretty much my rundown for my gear going into 2025. So yeah, if you have any questions, please leave them down in the comments below. I will get back to you, and I will catch you in the next video. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you've made it this far in the video. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.